Hey everybody, Will here, and today I am here with my brand new Panasonic GH4. And in case you haven't heard too much about this camera, this is just a really incredibly awesome new little camera that shoots at 4K resolution with amazing image quality. And I love it so much that I immediately picked up a pair of brand new f2.8 lenses for it. And I really can't recommend it enough, so much so that I recommended my day job, Snap Judgment, shoot their upcoming live show on it. That's a show that in the past has been shot with about 6 or 7 5D Mark IIIs. And I think this is really just going to be a much better camera for them. It's got that amazing Cinema 4K resolution, but it's also got a bunch of features like zebra stripes and focus peaking, which is just a really incredible tool to use, just to be able to see on these little monitors without a big setup and be able to nail focus with the help of that focus peaking feature. But what that means is that I'm going to have to order about a dozen new memory cards and batteries. And I thought before I do it, I would just grab a small bunch here and test them out and figure out exactly what sort of recording times we're going to be getting on some of these aftermarket batteries, as well as how many minutes we can fit on these 128 gigabyte cards, what cards are going to be better and faster for us, and can we even use some of our older cards that we have been using on the 5D Mark III, which we've been shooting on in the past. And so right now, we're just going to test them out and see how they go. In addition to its impressive specs, the GH4 comes in at under $1,700, which is well under half the price of the 5D Mark III it's replacing, making it a great choice for filmmakers on a budget. But one extra expense comes in the form of new memory cards. The GH4 recommends a card with a UHS 3 or greater rating to keep up with the higher bitrate video coming from the sensor. So I picked up two brand new cards from Transcend and ADATA, both 128 gigabytes to ensure we have enough space for the show, and both around $100. I wanted to figure out exactly how much time could fit on one of these 128 gigabyte cards, so the first thing I did was run a few preliminary tests just to see how big the files were on some of the most common settings. The GH4 features the ability to change its system frequency from NTSC to PAL and also to Cinema 24Hz. This enables video that, like film, is truly 24 frames per second, as opposed to 23.98 frames per second like most digital video cameras record. Considering we normally work in 23.98 frames per second, this really doesn't change much, but it's the only place you'll find the camera's true 4K mode, with a frame that's 4,096 pixels wide by 2,160 pixels tall. That's the same height as the other 4K modes that can be found in the NTSC and PAL frequencies, but 256 pixels wider, giving you a cinematic 19:10 aspect ratio instead of 16:9. And while there's 200 megabit per second and 50 megabit per second 1080p options, the GH4 lists all 4K modes as recording at 100 megabits per second. These are the only ones I'm interested in today, so first I'll figure out how much video I can fit on my 128 gigabyte cards by shooting in 24Hz in the C4K mode, 4K mode, and the NTSC 4K mode. What I found is they all record about 3 hours and 25 minutes of video, and at closer to 80 megabits per second on average, with the Cinema 4K mode having an ever so slight but noticeably higher bitrate. For our main test, I've purchased a number of aftermarket batteries for the GH4, most of which are around 1/3 the cost of the original. So for this test, I'll see how long the GH4 can record with these batteries, using 2 batteries for each brand and recording at 4K at 29.97 frames per second. And the stock battery charger will be used for all batteries. And with that, we see that the genuine Panasonic batteries take a solid first place, followed by Wasabi Power, then NewMowa, Clearmax, and finally, straggling quite a bit is the DTSE. Now, I should mention at this point that this test was actually done a number of times. The first time was about 3 months ago when I recorded the intro. I had issues with my computer and lost a bunch of that footage and opted to just reshoot it after I delayed the project a bit, of course. So what I found was the difference between that with these batteries being 100% brand new and again about 2.5 months later, I lost about 15% of time across the board. And on top of that, I didn't have the Wasabi Power for the first test. I didn't get it in time. I got it like a week and a half later, and I would say overall it has probably about only 3/4 the amount of time that the other batteries have. So actually I would give it a little bit of a penalty and put it closer to the NewMowa's time. And from that, we can see that the Wasabi battery and the NewMowa's are actually pretty good, again, especially for their price. And DTSE and Clearmax, again, I would pass on those ones. But really quickly, the GH4 in terms of its battery life already pretty amazing. I have the GH3 here, which also had amazing battery life. It had actually more battery life than the GH4. It's physically about the same. It uses the same batteries. And it just worked, or both of these cameras just have really great battery life. To compare it to some other cameras, basically what I'm used to is usually about 1.5 to 2 hours. That's what the 5D Mark III we were using before was using. And one of the accessories I like to get to help me deal with that situation, because it's not enough for a show in particular, are these, which are battery grips. And that basically lets you double the batteries by having 2 batteries in there. And I was really glad with the GH4 that I didn't have to go this route, because the GH4 battery grip kind of isn't that great. They have a special battery grip, which is like $1,000, which has a bunch of like XLR audio and stuff like that. But just the basic one, and this particular one is made by DTSE, which is actually, this is fine. It's not a battery. It's been fine. So, but one thing I hate about these, you'll notice it looks a little bit different. And that's because instead of having this go into place, and kind of that's how it attaches and that's how it communicates with this slot that goes into the battery holder, and then having 2 batteries on this slide thing. The way this one works is you still put in 1 battery into the camera. It connects through here, and the second battery goes in through here. And what kind of sucks about this is when you want to recharge the battery in the camera, you have to take it all apart. So you can't quickly just swap it and get 2 brand new batteries in there. You have to take it apart. And in some cases, that could actually be a good thing, because you can set it to use the battery grip first, and then it'll start using the internal battery. And then you could slowly keep swapping out the battery grip while you're recording if you have some sort of massive external recorder, which is pretty cool. But again, the battery life was so great. I don't like this one. I don't like that method. It doesn't work as well for me. And another stupid thing, which I hate that they do, here's the GH3, again, the same as the GH4. You can see the thread mount is right underneath the lens, which is exactly where it should be. But then the battery grip's thread mount is off center, which drives a lot of people crazy, and it doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to notice that difference. But with some rigs, it might matter, like a shoulder rig or some sort of Steadicam or something like that. So it's just kind of a stupid, weird decision that, again, Panasonic is new to battery grips. So apart from that, one thing I also want to point out with the batteries, and that was a bit actually for a surprise compared to the 5D Mark III. The 5D Mark III, during our first show that we used it, just started to die a lot sooner than I expected it to. 2 batteries weren't enough. Luckily, people had backup batteries, and we started charging batteries. But I was trying to figure out why, and I realized the HDMI monitoring output makes it drain a lot more battery power. So the GH4 has the same sort of situation where it can display video on your on-screen camera here, plus an external monitor through its HDMI output. But with the 5D Mark III, it seemed like it almost cut the battery life in half. It did something really bad. It was probably more like 60 or 70% of what it was, but it just seemed really severe. Again, we couldn't get through a whole show with 2 batteries. I wanted to do a quick test with the GH4, and I found that it cut the battery life by about 20%. So even with that penalty, still 1 battery lasted an entire show, which is really amazing. And one last thing about batteries, the stock GH4 battery, the Panasonic one, is rated as 1860 milliamps. And if we look at the NewMowa battery, as well as the Clearmax battery, they also are 1860 milliamps. But the Wasabi Power tries to kind of pull a fast one on you by saying it's 2000 milliamps, so you're going to want to buy that one. And then the DTSE goes even further and says 220 milliamps, or sorry, 2200 milliamps. So definitely don't be paying attention to the milliamp ratings in this sort of situation. The only exception is one like this. This is from a different camera. This is from the Sony HVR-V1U, which is an older camera, but a lot of cameras still do this, where the battery hangs off the back. And this is the stock battery from Sony, and it works great. It's got a huge bang for the size. And this is the aftermarket extended battery that I bought for actually less than this one. And it's rated at a higher milliamp rating. But look at it, it's like 4 times the size of it. I think it actually only lasts about 2.5 times the amount. But again, for less money, I don't mind the bigger size on that camera. But in this case, this actually does hold more than this, but obvious reasons. Wasabi and DTSE claim to be able to do that same sort of thing through witchcraft, apparently. But as we can see, it's just a lie, it's a marketing thing. And so points off there for that. Don't pay attention to that. If they are the same form factor, you're going to have to find out what people are saying, which one's the reputable brand. And that's actually what I'm going for with this. I'm going to be following this up with a test of the GoPro Hero 4, which I just got. I got a bunch of batteries, including I have a Wasabi and a NewMowa from those. And hopefully I'll be able to say when I'm buying these batteries, I'm going to go with one of those brands, or definitely avoid. It looks like DTSE, definitely avoid. And so hopefully that's going to be what I'm going to find through this whole thing. Because I've been using Aftermarket batteries. I like it. They fit my budget a lot better, and also my workflow a lot better. So this was kind of a cool test for me to finally actually do. On that note, though, that is my workflow. I, for instance, at home, what I do is I'll usually set up, I'll throw a brand new battery in, and then I'm recording for like 1.5 hours to 2 hours straight. And then I pull out I don't look at the battery to see if there's still life on it. I just pull it out and swap it out. If you're like a nature photographer or any sort of person that goes around with their camera and travels and kind of turns it off when they're not using it and uses it till the last drop, you might be better off getting like 2 Panasonic batteries. But me, for example, I'm much better off getting the Panasonic battery that came with my camera that I could use in those circumstances. And then I'd rather buy like 4 Wasabi batteries. And so the very last thing I wanted to talk about was a few of the memory cards. Going back to the 2 that I bought for this camera, the Transcend and the ADATA, both of them worked flawlessly in all the recording modes of the GH4. However, there was a slight edge on Transcend. And also, I should say, with them all being, even if they were the same, I've had some bad experiences with ADATA in terms of its physical build quality. The card actually performs well, and they seem to work. They don't seem to die more, except for when like the plastic starts cracking and like the little teeth right here. I've had chip a lot more on ADATA cards. So just a little kind of weird, quirky thing with the ADATA cards. With them all being the same, you might as well I would definitely recommend Transcend. But going to my old cards, which I have a lot of, I was interested in seeing if I could use any of them, even just as a backup, if not as a primary card. And so I ran a bunch of tests on them, no less than 2 tests per camera or per card. On the 2 recording modes, the C4K, the 100 megabit recording mode, and then the 200 megabit recording mode, the 1080p option. And going back to the C4K mode, almost all of these cards passed. I was pretty impressed there. It went all the way down to the Amazon Basics Class 10 card. Worked fine. I filled it up a number of times. It didn't have any errors. And the only exception was my SanDisk Ultra 64 gigabyte UHS-1 micro SD card. This is the one that I use in my GoPro Hero 3 Black. They have a newer version, which I think is gold, which says like 90 megabits per second on it, or it can read, I think is what that is. But that's for like the Hero 4, and this is the older version. Did not work with an adapter, of course, on the GH4. And then the other one that didn't work was the Patriot LX Pro, another older Class 10 card. So definitely impressed there, the C4K 100 megabit option. Going to the 200 megabit option, and this is, again, something that I'm not interested in at all. I think it's mostly for people doing like green screen stuff. I'm not sure what else people are using it for, but I'm more interested in the 4K on this camera. I sort of wish they had a 200 megabit per second option on the 4K mode, but they only have it for the 1080p mode. In any case, I tried these cards again. A lot of them didn't work in that mode. Some of them sort of worked for a little while and then they ran into an error. And they usually run into that error when it's spanning a clip, when it's going from one 4 GB clip to another 4 GB clip, because it's like overloading the buffer basically. But a few of them did work, including like this PNY Elite Performance 128 GB UHS 1 card, and then also this Lexar 64 GB UHS 1 card did work. So a couple of them did work, and again, that's leaving them and trying to get them to record and fill up the whole card. Quite a few of them worked for a few minutes up until the 4 GB clip span. And again, all these tests too, I did my best to see if they would work and if they would not work. But you know, if I wouldn't leave some of these recording, some of the cheaper ones, like this 128 GB class 10 card, the LX series, didn't work on the 200 megabit option, but it did work on the 100 megabit option. I probably wouldn't leave this one recording and hope it would just fill up the 128 GB card without me being there. It's just a little risky, and I can't complain if it stops. But if I could, you know, I definitely will keep it in my bag to record as a backup card. So you can definitely use older cards with this camera. Don't think it has to be a UHS 3 card. And then that is going to be about it for this video. Make sure you keep an eye out for that GoPro Hero 4 test, which is coming out soon. And again, hopefully the point of that will be we're going to see which of these aftermarket battery brands is going to be good and which is going to be bad in general. And hopefully again, I'm hoping the Wasabi and the NewMowa are going to be at the top and the other ones are going to be at the bottom. But we will see when that happens. And then apart from that, make sure you check the video info for links to all this stuff, as well as links to my Facebook page, facebook.com/willyoudesign. And then also make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Otherwise, that is going to be about it. And thanks for watching.